The baby was born without a brain, but you won't believe what doctors found inside her skull 8 years later. Little Amara, born in Wyoming, USA, was not expected to live very long. Her parents, Lisa and Martin, were told something heartbreaking. Their baby had a rare brain condition, and doctors didn't think she would survive. They were even asked if they wanted to end the pregnancy, but Lisa and Martin said no. Even with the fear and pain, they chose to keep her. They chose hope. As Amara got older, she was taken to many specialists. Doctors were confused. Her brain scans didn't make sense, and her condition seemed impossible to survive. Still, Amara kept growing. Year after year, her parents took her to checkups. Then one day, 8 years later, during a routine scan, something happened that no one expected. The doctors called Lisa and Martin back to the hospital. When they showed them the results and explained what they found inside Amara's skull, both parents broke down in tears. Amara, who had been born with only 3% of her brain, somehow defied everything science said was possible. For 8 years, her parents, Lisa and Martin, had walked a hard road, every appointment filled with questions doctors couldn't answer. From the very start, they were told she'd never walk, talk, or even see. But Amara did more than survive. Slowly, quietly, and without anyone noticing at first, she started doing the impossible. At just over 1 year old, Amara started moving her fingers in a way that caught her mother's attention. It was small, barely a twitch, but it was enough to give Lisa hope. The neurologist at the time told them not to get ahead of themselves. Movements like that, he said, could just be reflexes. Still, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something was going on inside her daughter's head, something no one could explain. By the time Amara turned 3, she had already broken every expectation set for her. She had learned how to sit up by herself. She recognized voices. She smiled when she heard her dad's footsteps coming down the hallway. And when she reached out to touch her mom's hand one morning on her own, without being guided, Lisa burst into tears. Not from sadness, but from the kind of joy that comes when the world finally starts giving back what it took. Doctors were baffled. They ordered more tests, more scans, but none of them had real answers. Her brain was never meant to develop like this, one specialist said, shaking his head as he looked at the images. This shouldn't be possible. Amara didn't know what the doctors were saying, but she knew the warmth in her parents' hugs. She knew the sound of her name, and little by little she kept surprising them. At 5 years old, she said her first word, Mama. It wasn't perfect and it didn't come out like it does with most kids, but it was clear, and that one word changed everything. The doctors now started paying closer attention. Something was happening inside Amara's skull. Over the years, her brain seemed to be filling out the space it was once missing. The early scans had shown nearly no brain tissue, but now, there was growth, real growth. Each scan looked better than the last. It wasn't just the appearance of tissue either. Her responses, her memory, her emotions, all were stronger than anyone had predicted. When she turned 8, Lisa and Martin took her in for what was supposed to be a routine appointment at a children's hospital in Denver. It was just another scan, just another day, or so they thought. But when the doctors saw the results, the room went quiet. The lead neurologist, a woman with decades of experience, stared at the screen for nearly a minute without speaking. Then she left the room and came back with 2 other consultants. They all looked at the scan. None of them said a word for the first few minutes. Then finally, one of them turned to Lisa and Martin and asked, "Has Amara had any major procedures since her last scan?" They shook their heads. Nothing had changed. No new surgery, no special treatment, just their usual daily care, love, and the regular therapies they'd been doing for years. That's when the neurologist turned the monitor around to face them and said, "This scan is showing something remarkable." According to the results, Amara's brain had now developed to nearly 85% of what a normal child's brain would be at her age. This wasn't just improvement, this was a complete rewrite of her medical file. From 3% to 85%. No known medicine, no special treatment, no scientific intervention had done this. It was her. Her brain had grown, adapted, and somehow restructured itself over time on its own. Lisa and Martin were speechless. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They sat there holding hands, staring at the screen that was supposed to once show emptiness, now full of something they were told would never be there. The doctors, who had once told them to prepare for the worst, were now shaking their heads in awe. Amara's story spread quickly after that. The hospital asked for permission to write about her case in a medical journal. Word reached local news stations. People were calling it a miracle. Doctors from other states wanted to meet her. Scientists said her brain's ability to rebuild itself over years was unlike anything they'd seen in modern medicine. And while the headlines called her a mystery, Lisa and Martin just called her their daughter. At home, nothing really changed for Amara. She still loved her music therapy sessions, where she'd tap along to rhythms with her fingers. She still giggled at the cartoons she didn't fully understand but somehow enjoyed anyway. She still hugged her parents every night before bed. But now they knew. Now they had proof of what they had always believed deep down, that Amara wasn't broken. She wasn't lost. She wasn't empty. She was growing, healing, changing in her own time. As the years continued, Amara kept progressing. Her walking was slow, but it came. Her speech wasn't fluent, but it improved. She started stringing words together by 9. By 10, she could ask for her favorite breakfast. She could answer questions. She could laugh at jokes. Researchers began studying her brain in more detail. They discovered that somehow the parts of her brain that were missing at birth had been replaced by rewired pathways. It was as if her brain had found its own way of solving a problem that medicine hadn't cracked yet. The plasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, was something scientists knew about, but never like this. One professor said, it's as though her brain saw what was missing and decided to build it. No one could explain why Amara's brain chose to grow when others with similar conditions didn't. Maybe it was timing, but what everyone agreed on was that Amara had rewritten the rules. She had given hope to hundreds of families who had children with severe brain damage. She had shown them that nothing is certain, that even the most impossible odds can shift. Lisa and Martin were later invited to speak at medical conferences. They never used big words or complicated explanations. They just told the truth, that they'd been scared, that they'd almost listened when doctors said to give up, that they had chosen love instead, and that their daughter, the one with 3% of her brain at birth, was now lighting up rooms and smiling at strangers. Amara's doctors still track her progress to this day. She goes for scans once a year now, mostly for research, but every time it's the same. Her brain is still there, still strong, still full of life. And Amara, she's now thinking about what she wants to be when she grows up.